An agonizing week has gone by now since that urgent Amber Alert was put out for 5-year-old Nathan O'Brien. All that time, missing along with his grandparents. And still, police cannot give the family any answers about where they went, who's involved, what exactly happened. But there is some new information on this story today, and there are some new developments. The CBC's Megan Grant has the latest on the investigation. Megan.
Evan, police have been expanding their search every day, and today they've moved to a new location. Shoulder to shoulder, police scour this rural area northeast of Calgary. It's been 4 long days of looking for clues. The canine unit's been called in, RCMP dogs trying to pick up a scent. Police were called to this property Friday after a green truck was spotted here. It matched the description of one seen near the Lickness home the night Nathan O'Brien and his grandparents disappeared. Investigators haven't yet said if it's the same vehicle. Douglas Garland was taken from the property by police Friday night and questioned over the weekend. The 54-year-old has a criminal past, and it was on this property in the early 90s RCMP caught him producing amphetamines. He skipped town, assumed a false identity, lived and worked in Vancouver for 7 years, leaving little trace.
The individual, the last record we have was in 1999, and as I mentioned, his file has been destroyed, so as a result, we don't have much information that we can give you.
Eventually, Garland was caught and brought back to Calgary, where he pleaded guilty and served time in prison. There's a connection to the missing family. Garland's sister lists several members of the O'Briens and Licknesses as friends on Facebook. This weekend, a new charge related to the recent use of a stolen identity was laid, allowing police to keep him in custody. Garland appeared briefly in court on that charge this morning before the matter was adjourned until Wednesday. Nathan O'Brien's father came to watch. It's been more than a week since he last saw his son. Green ribbons mark a neighborhood grieving its missing members.
It's rough, I watch the news way more often than I used to, and just looking for any development or anything to put some closure or any other dimension on this.
Police haven't said whether they'll be back searching that area again tomorrow, but the scene remains taped off and guarded by officers. Evan?
All right, thanks for that, Megan. That's Megan Grant in Calgary. Now, as you can see, there are still lots of questions about this unusual case. To get a perspective on how it's unfolding, I'm joined now by Dave Perry. He's a police officer. He's been a police officer for 27 years. Thanks, Dave, for being here. What does it tell us as we look at that story? The police continue to search that farm area owned by Douglas Garland's family, even though they've released him from questioning specifically about that case of Nathan O'Brien and his grandparents. What does that tell you?
Well, it tells us a lot. It tells us, first of all, that they don't have evidence to arrest or charge him at this time with this particular case. But more importantly, it tells you that he's probably at the top, if not the very top person on their list of what we call persons of interest. So they're onto something. There's some traction. There's a lot of red flags here that are starting to fit into place nicely. So I think it's encouraging, at least, that they've got some direction at this time.
All right. Now they've been missing for more than a week here. And as time goes on, what does that tell you about how this case might be resolved?
Well, first of all, I can't imagine what the family's going through and how tragic this must be for them. But I can tell you this, too. Time is not a friend for an investigator in an abduction case. And the more time that passes, the less that we figure there's going to be a good chance of getting them back successfully.
All right. You're a former lead investigator. You mentioned red flags. So I want to look at this through your eyes. What red flags are being raised about this case, maybe about the suspects in this case for you?
Well, when you look at abduction cases, and this could be classified as an abduction, and based on the fact that they told us that there was violence in the crime scene, it could also be a home invasion. And when you look at these two crimes, one of the things that we always see in common is usually some kind of a connection between the perpetrator and the family. So red flag number one, I find it very interesting that Garland is somehow connected to that family. Number two, he has a criminal past that would put him in a position, or at least in a suspicious place in terms of having the ability to carry something out. I believe that it's a crime that's motivated by greed, that there's a profit approach to this whole thing, and he seems to be the kind of person that could fit into that mold as well. And that vehicle, we can't ignore the fact that that vehicle was driving around that neighborhood, and he just happens to have one that matches. And I don't believe in coincidence.
Okay, but again, he's just a person of interest.
He is.
So innocent until proven guilty for anybody. Anything else raise any red flags? What they're looking for this crime scene? Was there another crime scene?
Well, when there's an abduction case, people are moved from the primary crime scene to some other crime scene. So obviously with all of this searching, they're hoping to find that. Once they find the secondary crime scene, that generally leads to evidence that will identify the perpetrator, and I hope that's what they're doing right now.
All right, I got to leave it there. Dave Perry, thanks for that.
My pleasure.